Hey, it's time for Thoughts on Thursday, where I share what's been on my mind lately and you share what you think about it in the comments section below. Before we get into it, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and share. I greatly appreciate you guys. So today I'll be discussing what I learned from the Great Courses Plus Lecture 2, The Rise of Communism, Marx and Ingalls, and Intellectual Partnership. And as a reminder, I'm not sponsored by the Great Courses Plus. This is just what I'm using to educate myself and then therefore educate you. This is like the shorter version. Hopefully today will be a shorter version. There's a lot to go over in this, guys, but if you want more of the meat and some diagrams and other things like that, kind of the visual aid stuff, I recommend following along on the Great Courses Plus, because I'm, again, just trying to sort of summarize this for you all. We'll see what happens today. But so yeah, I'm going to be going over the impressions of Marx and the three elements that were taking place to lead to the development of communist ideals, and the backgrounds of Marx and his comrade Friedrich Ingalls and their meeting and relationship dynamic. So that's what we will talk about today. But before I start, I do want to apologize. I know I did in the comments, or not the comments, but the little title of my video and whatnot. I apologize again, though, for the microphone issues. I think I got it figured out this time. I hope to God that when I listen to this, there won't be that annoying sound. I think it was interference from my phone case, so I have that off today. So hopefully I am loud and clear and not crunchy for you guys, but I appreciate you all who actually listened through the whole thing. That was so annoying, especially trying to listen to something as heavy of a topic as communism and then try to, not be distracted by that sound. So thank you for those who stuck through it today. Hopefully we'll go more smoothly. I know that I kind of probably rambled and was a little more scattered. Again, I'm new to this. I'm trying things out. Hopefully today will be better. But again, I thank you for your patience with me. So let's go ahead and get into the lecture. I also have to make an announcement. I have to remind you that I'm not, some people maybe thought this was going to be more of a professional lecture type format. No, this is just me being me and telling y'all about Marxism and communism, so definitely not going to be too professional here, but I'll try to be clear, hopefully. So, okay, now let's go ahead and get into it. So in this lecture, Dr. Vaius Gabriel Lulevichus of the University of Tennessee mentioned that Marx and Engels' intellectual partnership was one of the most famous in history, and I imagined that they were like the Paul McCartney and John Lennon of communism. And then I wondered what kind of music they might have written if that was the case. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. All that we take away from her, distribute equally to everyone. So anyway, moving on, Dr. Vaius opens with a first impression of Karl Marx in 1853 when he was 34 years old by a spy sent to London where Marx was living in exile. And the spy was hired by the German kingdom of Prussia. The spy reported that Marx was living in one of the worst and cheapest places in London, basically a ghetto. It was a small two-room residence that was filthy and in disarray. The tobacco smoke was so strong that it was suffocating, and his wife and kids lived there too with their sparse belongings, so it sounds like a dream place. Marx was of average height and powerful build, and his eyes, the spy said, were large and piercing, demonic, and had something sinister about them, and quote, however, one can tell at first glance this is a man of genius and energy. His intellectual superiority exercises an irresistible force on his surroundings, end quote. So Marx left a big impression on this spy, apparently. The spy also said that Marx was, quote, cynical, disorderly, fond of getting drunk, often idle, but also capable at times of great bursts of sustained work, end quote. And then that kind of made me wonder if he maybe had some form of bipolar, probably narcissism. A lot of these types of people do. So the spy concluded, quote, conversations with this communist chief is agreeable and interesting, end quote. I am sensing a man crush here. No, that's stupid. So there is an impression of Marx that this spy had. What do you guys think? What is your impression of what you've heard so far about Marx? You can comment below. So next, Dr. Veyes explains the importance of the prior context that set the stage for the development of communism. So there were three elements that had taken place. So there was the French Revolution. There was the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and the Philosophical Revolution. In 1789, the French Revolution ushered in the age of politics. Wait, I didn't say that right. In 1879, the French Revolution ushered in a new age in politics, an ideological mass politics that we are still in today. The French Revolution was radical and violent. There was a great reign of terror from 1793 to 1794, where tens of thousands of people were killed. The revolutionaries defended their violence by saying, "You cannot make an omelet without breaking a few eggs." You familiar with that? I've heard that before. And now whenever I hear it again, I will be thinking something totally different than I did in the past. Thank you, communism. So yes, many changes were being made during this political revolution in France. Christianity was abolished, a new calendar was created, and nationalism began to take hold. The revolutionaries became so radical, they turned on each other and arrested other revolutionaries for being, quote, insufficiently devoted. There was a saying, quote, "The revolution is a mother that eats her children," end quote. So later, socialists and communists would see this form of revolution as a cautionary tale. It seemed to be headed in the right direction at first and then went very wrong. Aiming for a political utopia, it was coupled with mass murder and then became a dictatorship. So the initial point of the French Revolution was to break with feudal privileges to ensure liberty, equality, and fraternity. Then the radicals deposed of the king and executed him. Then they identified, quote, enemies of the people and killed them, end quote. So that sounds pleasurable, right? So I'm going to pause actually right here as the bells, are going off in my head as I read this, or as I was listening to this lecture. Because right now there is a push for major cultural and political reform, as we all know. Violence is rising in the name of political and ideological movements. So let's not allow the government to take over more and more and eventually maybe lead to dictatorship of sorts, please. Okay, I hope that we don't repeat this kind of stuff. So the French Revolution ended when Napoleon became dictator in 1799. The emperor deposed then of the revolutionary leadership, and Napoleon was defeated in 1815. The people that still strived for a new society, calling themselves socialists, went for a more peaceful approach instead of using the force and violence that they had done in the past. In 1835, the term socialist became current in both Britain and France. The ideals of socialism took hold in many places, and 178 socialist communities were established in the US, but most at the time were short-lived. And that was new information to me. I had no idea that back then there were a bunch of socialists in the United States, but there were. Marx and Ingalls scorned these early socialists. They saw them as early stage of development of the true revolutionary ideals. So then the second element of context was the Industrial Revolution, which first took off in Britain. And from their overseas imperialism, it was brought around the world. And obviously, we all became very industrialized. It had important consequences for society and politics. It changed the world's landscape and the way life had been lived. It also changed the social order. The new middle class, the bourgeoisies, arose in the cities and towns. An industrial working class arose in the cities. There were still rich people and peasants, but they didn't seem as important. And the poor and unemployed that were on the outskirts of society were denounced by the populace as dangerous and the criminal classes. And Dr. Veyes gives an example of the scenery in a lot of Dickens books. Charles Dickens is kind of, what the industrialized revolution looked like. And I think naming these characters, you kind of can get an idea of the scenery if you are a Dickens fan. So there was a lot of bad things that came about from industrialization, like exploiting workers, child labor, dangerous working conditions and dirty conditions and whatnot. So that was the Industrial Revolution. The third element and last one in context was the German Philosophical Revolution. So France had the political revolt, Britain industrialized, and Germany was already known for their profound scholarship and thought. So Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, an idealist philosopher, had a big impact on Germany at the time, and he developed idealism. It's very heady and lengthy, guys. I actually tried to, there's some diagrams, and it was just like, this is going to be way too long. So again, go to the Great Courses Plus and get the app, watch lecture 2, and you'll see some more in-depth stuff, or just Google what idealism is by Hegel's Idealism, and you will see kind of what that is all about. But yeah, Hegel's followers ended up becoming radicalized. It seems like these ideologies tend to do that. So one of his followers included Ludwig Fairbach. He was a philosopher and anthropologist, and Fairbach and Hegel would be a big influence on Marx and Ingalls. And again, yeah, you can look up Fairbach's philosophies as well to kind of see what route he took. So the 3 elements we discussed created the environment that Marx and Engels would build their philosophies on. So political revolution, industrialization, and philosophical transformation. Their ideas would affect the lives of millions, and my life, and your life, and hopefully not Milton's life, but maybe Milton's life. So next I'll be discussing what I learned about the backgrounds of Marx and Engels, but I'm going to pause and interject a thought that struck me when after I'd kind of thought over these 3 elements that kind of laid the groundwork for what would grow out of to be, communism and Marxism. So to me, there are definitely parallels. Maybe it sets up history to repeat itself here. I hope not. But so communism developed out of a political revolution, an industrial revolution, and a philosophical revolution. And when Trump shocked the world by winning the 2016 presidential election, you could say that spurred a political, maybe not a revolutionary, but upheaval, definitely, and a jab against the governmental status quo. So him being elected radicalized a lot of the oppression in response, as well as radicalizing supporters. That has led to the extreme division that we have today. Similarly, the Industrial Revolution, similarly to the Industrial Revolution, we've had a revolution in technology over the last few years with social media and cell phones, and it's all become a very defining aspect of our modern society and has changed how we communicate, as well as changing the physical environment and landscape and how we live life. Cell phones are everything, right? It's just scan them, everything. So that, and then just social media is our way of communicating and getting information. So that is very revolutionary in my view. So there was also, a lot of pitfalls with industrialization and a lot of, injustices and people being extorted and whatnot. Well, you could say that is happening or has been happening with our new world of social media and things like that. Until things get maybe more regulated, we could, we see some corruption that's going on. Similar again to the Industrial Revolution, until they got their footing about what was right and what was wrong, utilizing these new ways. And so we're kind of going through that as well. And like the philosophical revolution, within the more recent years, a cultural shift has taken place. There are theories being put forth that are affecting our society in the way we think about race, gender, and sexuality. Ideological programs are being implemented like diversity, anti-racism, and whiteness training, a focus on generalization of people and diminishment of individualism, etc. And as those ideologies have been developing, throw in COVID-19 and a global pandemic, and here we are, dealing with cultural civil war and seeing socialism, neo-Marxism, and communism trying to present as a solution to our struggles. But guys, how do you think that's working out for China or, Cuba or some of those other countries that are communist and socialist and practice Marxism? I don't really feel that that's the best option for our world, our country today. So do you see the correlation that I was making with those 3 elements of what set up kind of the perfect soup, stew, whatever for communism and Marxism to come about. And I feel like we are in that again today. And it's been, I think, exacerbated or accelerated by the pandemic and lockdowns and, all these other things. So to me, it was very interesting to kind of see those similarities. And I hope to God that we will not let communism take over this country, because it will not end well. So back to Marx and Ingalls' backgrounds. Real quick though, I want to know what you think. That's important. I want to know what you feel about this. Do you see those correlations that I was making? Do you feel similar? Do you not? Whatever, comment below. So Marx and Ingalls were very different men, and in their relationship, Marx was actually the more dominant personality. That's not a surprise. Fun fact though, Marx was really into Greek mythology, and he saw himself as Prometheus, as the one bringing fire to humankind. I bet you wish you could unsee that. Marx as Prometheus. Pretty hot, guys? No? Sorry. Back to this. Marx was born in 1818 in Western Germany. He came from a Jewish family in the Prussia area, and he had rabbis on both sides of his family, but his father did not become a rabbi because he converted to Christianity to escape the discrimination that Jews had. And Marx, so he never practiced Judaism, and he actually was an atheist. He married Jenny von Westphalen, the daughter of a baron, after he went through college. And it was at the University of Berlin where he was inspired by Hegel's philosophy. In 1842, he earned his doctorate dissertation on ancient Greek philosophy. So he was going to be a professor, or he wanted to be a professor, but his radicalism and atheism made it hard for him to get a job. Along with his sloppy appearance, his sloppy writing, unable to meet deadlines, he loved quarreling, liked to dominate others, and couldn't tolerate anyone disagreeing with him. He sounds just great, guys. So Marx became a journalist, though, and eventually an editor of a radical paper, go figure, that ended up being shut down by the German government. So then in 1843, Marx and his family moved to Paris. Now, Friedrich Ingalls was a contrast to Marx. He was born in 1820 to a wealthy German family of factory owners. Maybe socialism was his way of rebelling, I don't know. But his dad was a fundamentalist Christian, but he was very supportive of his son and his son's ideals of socialism. So, Dad of the Year award, I guess. Ingalls was handsome, dashing, attractive to women, a people person, generous, productive, lucid in his writing, and had a magnetic personality. He was very different from Marx's abrasiveness. They apparently were the yin to each other's yang. Ingalls attended the University of Berlin, like Marx. That's where he converted to socialism. Ingalls' first meeting with Marx in 1842 didn't go very well, I guess. Marx was cold to him. So that was their first meeting. And then Ingalls moved to England, where he worked at his family's factory in Manchester and got the firsthand sort of accounts of the hard conditions of the factory workers. And this inspired in 1845 for him to publish a book, The Conditions of the Working Class in England. That is not a very creative title, but that's what he wrote. So then he never married, but had a secret affair with this woman named Mary Burns. And when she died, he got with her sister Lizzie. So that's fun. In 1844 in Paris, Ingalls and Marx met again, and this time they became besties, guys, and developed their fun ideas that they wrote into the Communist Manifesto. I didn't say that right. The Communist Manifesto, which we will be discussing next week. Yay! So I think I made this lecture shorter. I hope it was clear. So now, before I go, though, it's time for communism and socialism in the news. So last week I brought up an article about a Cuban restaurant owner who was being hassled by Black Lives Matter extremists, wanting him to do all these things that they wanted him to do, like give money and make sure there's, a certain percentage of Black people working there, and just all this stuff that they're demanding on him. And they were sort of threatening him if he wasn't going to do it. Well, he didn't do it anyways. And they had a little protest about, let's not bring socialism here. So last week's video, the link to that article is in there if you didn't hear it, so you can check that out. But this week, I read a Reuters article, and I will say I just downloaded the Reuters app for my phone, and if you look on the media bias, there's like a chart. You can look it up and you can find media bias charts. Look for the 2020 edition. But they are dead center. Very, very neutral news outlet. And I'm actually impressed. The app is cool because you can kind of select what kind of news and stuff that you want to hear, and they have your own homepage with all your information. And they seem very neutral and don't seem very biased or slanted in their reporting. So I like that. So yeah, but an article caught my attention today. And let's see. So yeah, the title is U.S. Justice Department says Yale illegally discriminates against Asians and whites. And the article goes, quote, I'm just going to read the first couple of paragraphs. Quote, the U.S. Justice Department on Thursday accused late, that was a Y, and anyway, sorry, I can't read my own writing apparently. Let me start that again. The U.S. Justice Department on Thursday accused Yale University of illegally discriminating against Asian Americans and white applicants in its undergraduate admissions process in violation of the U.S. civil rights law. The findings are the result of a 2-year investigation in response to a complaint by Asian American groups concerning Yale's conduct, the department said in a statement. The department was prepared to file a lawsuit against Yale if the school in New Haven, Connecticut did not take remedial measures. So good for them. I'm going to put the link to the article below so you can read the entire article, and it has background and everything. But yeah, good for them, because that's so stupid. I mean, I get giving people opportunities, that might not normally have those opportunities, but to like blatantly discriminate against Asians and white people to go to your school it's so wrong. And yet there's so many ideologies today that's like, oh no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, honestly, if I applied and they learned that I was Asian and rejected me based on that, I guess that'd make me feel better than them rejecting me based on the fact that I probably wouldn't be able to be accepted anyways, just because. So yeah, I would say, I didn't get accepted to Yale because I'm Asian, but of course, no one would know that I'm Asian. No one, people have a hard time knowing what I am half the time. We'll go into that another time, but yeah. So that's a good article, and again, I'm glad people are standing up for, what's right. Just accept people based upon their merits, and if you have scholarships maybe for people, I don't know. I don't need to get into that right now, but read the article, because that's kind of, would that be defined as more of a socialistic thing or a communistic thing as far as that kind of thing? Yeah, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you can see which ideology that fits under to do something like that is very wrong. So anyways, next week we'll be on lecture 3. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Questions, comments below again, guys. And I thank you so much for taking time to listen to me. And remember, my thoughts are my own. We may not agree, but I love you anyway.